Sometimes a war begins not with a declaration, but with a signal drifting through the dark. Halo's universe stretches far beyond the surface of any one world. It is a place shaped by ancient silence, uneasy alliances, and the long shadow of things forgotten. The first meeting between humanity and the Covenant did not bring understanding. It brought a question that reached across stars: what survives when trust is lost and time keeps moving? The years that followed became a test of endurance. Worlds were lost one by one. Human space grew smaller as the Covenant pressed forward, guided by faith and secrecy. In this time, Spartans became more than soldiers. The silence between battles often felt heavier than the fighting itself. Even as new threats emerged from the past, the old pressures of waiting and uncertainty never lifted. Every decision seemed to stretch out beneath the weight of history. Now, as you settle in, let time slow around you. The pace will remain gentle. Nothing will shift without warning. Here, the story of Halo's long war unfolds at its own steady rhythm, leaving room for each moment to linger. Chapter 17: First Contact at Harvest and the Opening of the Human Covenant War. In the quiet dawn before the harvest, the world of harvest moved with the slow certainty of routine. Workers drove their machines across fields heavy with grain, and distant towns blinked to life beneath a pale morning sky. On the orbital platform known as the Tiara, technicians monitored space traffic, their screens tracing the usual flow of cargo and shuttles. There was nothing to suggest that history would soon break across this peaceful colony. Yet, on February 3, 2525, the Tiara made contact with something new. Its long-range radar caught the shadow of a ship, sleek, silent, and unlike any vessel in human records. The name Rapid Conversion was not yet known to those on the surface, but its arrival marked the end of isolation. The first formal meeting between humanity and the Covenant took place days later at the Harvest Botanical Gardens. Records describe a tense gathering. Human diplomats and security personnel arrived with protocols meant for insurrectionists or pirates, not for the unknown. Across the garden's glass domes and carefully tended paths, the alien delegation appeared, Geralhane warriors, led by their chieftain, Maccabeus. The language barrier was immediate and absolute. Scanners flickered, translators failed, and the silence between the two groups thickened. It was said that the Covenant spoke only of relics, their interest fixed on artifacts buried beneath harvest soil. No common ground emerged. The peace talks collapsed in confusion, and then in violence. Gunfire echoed through the gardens, shattering glass and scattering delegates. What began as a chance for understanding ended as a firefight, its consequences rippling outward. Within hours, the town of Gladsheim became the stage for the first full-scale assault. The Rapid Conversion descended from orbit, its weapons lighting the night sky. Emergency channels filled with overlapping calls for help. In the town's center, civilians ran for shelter as Covenant forces advanced. Plasma burned through stone and metal. Witnesses recalled the shapes of alien machines moving with single-minded purpose, indifferent to pleas or warning shots. At the Tiara and the reactor complex, UNSC militia and hastily armed workers took their positions. Reports from these battles describe confusion and fear, defenders outmatched by technology they could scarcely imagine. The Covenant pressed forward, overwhelming resistance at every turn. During the chaos, attempts were made to evacuate civilians. The Tiara, once a symbol of harvest's prosperity, became a lifeline. Shuttles launched in desperate succession, each packed with families and wounded. Some made it to orbit, others did not. The fate of many civilians remains unclear. Records from these hours are fragmentary, full of broken transmissions and unfinished logs. Later, survivors would speak of friends lost in the confusion, of ships that never returned. The official accounts do not fill every gap. In the midst of the fighting, figures like Captain Jacob Keyes and Sergeant John Forge emerged. Dialogue between them, preserved in ship logs and mission debriefings, reveals the pressure mounting on every defender. Orders came quickly, sometimes contradicting, as the scale of the attack became clear. Forge coordinated ground resistance, while Keyes relayed commands from orbit, both aware that conventional tactics offered little hope. The Covenant's weapons cut through vehicles and fortifications. At the reactor complex, desperate charges slowed the enemy, but could not stop them. By the time the Spirit of Fire arrived, much of Harvest already lay in ruin. The final act was swift and absolute. The Covenant introduced a tactic never before seen by human eyes: glassing. From high above, their ships unleashed lances of energy, scouring the surface. Fields, towns, and forests vanished in fire. Later missions would show the aftermath: a world left lifeless, its surface turned to black glass. The air itself shimmered with heat. Environmental details in these missions reveal the totality of the loss: silence where there had been voices, shadow where there had been color and life. For those who watched from orbit, the destruction of Harvest was more than a defeat. It was a message, plain and final. The peace had been shattered. Word of the attack spread unevenly across human space. At first, confusion reigned. The colonial military administration dispatched the Argo to investigate, but it too was lost, destroyed by the rapid conversion in April. As the months passed, other ships followed: the Heracles, Arabia, and Vostok, all part of Battle Group 4. Their engagement at Harvest in October ended with heavy losses. Only Hercules returned, limping back to Reach with news of an enemy beyond anything the UNSC had prepared for. The fall of Harvest set events in motion that could not be reversed. Colonies across the outer and inner colonies received reports of unknown attackers. On Alpha Corvi 2, the Covenant struck with the same efficiency, overwhelming defenses on December 3rd. Each new contact revealed fresh horrors, new weapons, new species, and tactics that left little hope for survivors. The colonial military administration moved to full alert, mobilizing fleets and issuing evacuation orders where possible. At Reach, the heart of military planning, new defensive lines were drawn. Ship manifests from this period list the arrival of reinforcements, while environmental details in mission briefings depict hurried construction and tense preparations. In Arcadia, the pattern repeated. Covenant vessels descended, their dropships filling the sky. Mission logs and trailers show Arcadia City under siege, with civilians fleeing through shattered streets. New enemy types appeared for the first time, their forms and weapons unfamiliar to defenders on the ground. The evacuation centers, hastily abandoned, told their own story: possessions left behind, messages scrawled in panic, and silence settling where thousands had gathered only hours before. The UNSC struggled to adapt, deploying fleets and shifting tactics, but the pace of attacks left little time for reflection. Each world lost sharpened the sense of crisis. The war, once unimaginable, was now inescapable. As the conflict spread, so too did uncertainty. The Office of Naval Intelligence, already wary of insurrection on Harvest, found itself chasing rumors and incomplete reports. Files from this period are often redacted, with entire sections blacked out or missing. The true objectives of the Covenant remained elusive. In early encounters, they spoke only of Forerunner relics, ignoring all attempts at negotiation. Communications failed again and again, and attempts at peace became rare. Survivor accounts from the harvest battles sometimes contradicted official reports, describing enemy movements or weapons not documented elsewhere. Incomplete logs referenced colonies that ceased all contact, their fate left unresolved. Among both military and civilian populations, rumors multiplied. News bulletins speculated about the enemy's motives, sometimes wildly. Some spoke of secret rituals, others of entire worlds erased without warning. The scale of the Covenant's campaign was never fully established in these early years. Each new report brought more questions than answers. In the aftermath of each attack, survivors struggled to make sense of what they had witnessed. Some described events that could not be confirmed, while others vanished with their worlds. Beneath the confusion, the consequences were unmistakable. The loss of harvest sent a shockwave through every human colony. Morale faltered as news spread, and faith in old defenses crumbled. The military, once confident in its numbers and technology, now faced an enemy whose capabilities seemed limitless. Civilian populations, once distant from the war, found themselves caught in the path of destruction. The old routine, the slow certainty of peace, was gone. The years from 2525 to 2530 became a time of relentless escalation. Each battle revealed new threats, each loss deepened the crisis. The lines of communication, once open and reliable, grew tangled with rumor and fear. The war's true origins and the enemy's ultimate goals remained hidden, lost in the fog of battle and the silence of destroyed worlds. Yet even as uncertainty grew, the pattern was clear. The human, Covenant war had begun, and with it, an era of struggle that would reshape every corner of human space. There was no turning back. The first contact at harvest had set the course, and the years of peace were already a memory. Chapter 18: Asymmetric War and the Grinding Loss of Human Space. The years between 2530 and 2549 mark a time when the war pressed hard against every boundary of human space. In the early days, the United Nations Space Command still spoke of holding ground. By the middle years, the language had changed. Now every world was a battleground, and every retreat left behind more than dust and silence. The Covenant's fleets pressed forward without pause. Their ships swept across the stars, burning away settlements, with a precision that left little behind. The names of lost worlds grew longer with each month. Jericho 7, New Constantinople, and the colonies of the Leonis Minoris system. Each one fell in turn, their lights snuffed out, their people scattered or gone. Records from the time describe the Battle of Jericho 7 as a turning point. The colony had been a symbol of human expansion, its cities and fields the product of a century's hope. When the Covenant arrived, defenders scrambled to evacuate as much as they could. Civilians crowded into docking bays. Marines held narrow corridors, buying minutes at a time for those still waiting. Ship logs from the evacuation are sparse, but the chaos echoes in fragments. Engines roared to life. Orders crackled over comms. The sky above the colony burned with the first fire of orbital bombardment. When the last ship lifted away, nothing remained but ruin. In the aftermath, survivors would speak little of what they had seen. The memory of Jericho 7 became a shadow that followed every new campaign. The loss of these worlds forced the United Nations Space Command to adapt. In 2535, the Cole Protocol entered service. Its rules were clear and absolute. No ship was permitted to lead the Covenant toward Earth or any other core human world. Navigation data had to be purged before any retreat. Captains were ordered to destroy their own ships if capture became likely. The protocol's requirements appeared in every mission briefing, every codex entry that survived. Crew members learned the procedures by heart. The cost of a single mistake was measured in entire worlds. The protocol changed the flow of every battle. Ships broke off rather than risk pursuit. Fleets scattered. The space between colonies grew wider, more dangerous, and harder to patrol. Even as the protocol slowed the Covenant's advance, the enemy pressed deeper. By 253-6, their forces began to swarm into the inner colonies. The line of defense shrank. In the Leonis Minoris system, 2 of 3 colonies fell in rapid succession in 2537. New Constantinople, once a hub of trade and culture, joined the list of lost worlds that same year. The maps changed almost daily. Where once the boundaries of human space stretched across the spiral arms, now only isolated pockets remained. In every abandoned city, the evidence of hurried flight lingered. Streets littered with broken belongings. Shipyards left half-finished, cranes rusting in the open air. In the silence, only the wind moved. The shrinking map left its mark on those who survived. Official records from this period say little about the feelings of civilians or soldiers. The facts are cold: dates, losses, orders given and obeyed. Yet the evidence remains in the world itself. In ruined habitats and empty stations, the absence of life becomes a presence of its own. Each derelict carries the weight of those who once called it home. The scale of loss is written not only in the number of destroyed colonies, but in the silence that follows. Against a foe whose ships outnumbered and outgunned them at every turn, the defenders of humanity turned to new forms of war. The years after 2535 brought a shift in strategy. The United Nations Space Command could no longer meet the Covenant in open battle and hope to win. Instead, they learned to strike from the shadows, to rely on speed and surprise. Shipyards produced new classes of frigates. These vessels were built for rapid strikes and quick retreats. Weapon descriptions from the period speak of lighter armaments and reinforced hulls, designed to withstand brief but violent encounters. Guerrilla tactics became the norm. Mission objectives shifted from holding ground to inflicting damage and escaping alive. In the logs of Operation Prometheus, a small group of ships managed to destroy the Covenant manufacturing plant K749 in 2537. The success came at a high cost, but it proved that the enemy could bleed. Other records recount the siege of the Atlas Moons, where United Nations Space Command forces won a rare victory that same year. For a moment, hope flickered. Yet for every battle won, many more ended in retreat or destruction. Specialized units emerged, trained for sabotage and deep reconnaissance. Their names appear in codex entries and ship manifests, though few details survive. These teams worked behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence or planting explosives in vital structures. The Covenant responded in kind. Enemy encounter logs describe the deployment of new sensor arrays and patrol patterns, designed to catch human ships before they could strike. The arms race grew more desperate with each passing month. For every innovation, the enemy found a counter. Kill ratios in ship-to-ship combat climbed. By 2053-5, the Covenant destroyed 3 human ships for every one of their own lost. Ground combat followed a similar pattern. Isolated units sometimes won the day through ambush or cunning, but the cost was always high. In 2536, records show that humans achieved victory in scattered ground battles, yet the price paid in lives left little to celebrate. The effectiveness of these tactics remains uncertain. Official accounts do not dwell on the details. What does remain is the sense that every victory was temporary, every gain soon erased by the next wave of the Covenant's advance. The war's middle years were measured not only in territory lost, but in the toll taken on the human spirit. Survivor accounts from this period are scarce. The records that do exist are silent on the daily struggles of civilians left behind, or the fate of those captured. The only certainty is found in the lists of the dead and missing. Some fates are known in grim detail. In 2545, the civilians captured on Draco III were killed by grunts and jackals. That same year, Operation Torpedo claimed all but 2 of its participating Spartan trees. Names like Tom B292 and Lucy B091 appear in mission summaries, survivors in a battle that left no room for triumph. In the absence of personal testimony, the mood of these years is found in the shifting tone of official broadcasts. Early announcements spoke of resistance and the promise of reinforcement. As the war dragged on, language grew spare. Hope gave way to endurance. Propaganda campaigns continued, but their effectiveness is not recorded. There are no surviving logs to say whether morale held or broke. Communities adapted as best they could. Some vanished without trace, their fate unknown. Others found ways to persist, holding out in hidden bunkers or remote settlements. The scale of dislocation remains unclear, but the scars are visible in every abandoned world. Questions linger in the silence left by the war's middle years. The fate of many colonies is not recorded. The psychological cost to those who fought and those who fled is not described in the remaining records. The world that emerges from these years is one of uncertainty and endurance. The boundaries of human space have contracted. The front lines are closer to Earth than ever before. The sense of inevitability grows heavier with each passing season. Yet even as despair spreads, the war does not end. The defenders of humanity continue to adapt. New ships leave the last shipyards. Small victories are won in the shadows. The cost is counted in lives and worlds, but the struggle continues. The years between 2530 and 2549 leave behind a map marked by loss and a people marked by survival. The story does not close. The outcome remains unwritten, carried forward by those who endure. In the quiet that follows each retreat, the hope for one more day lingers, fragile but unbroken. Chapter 19. Spartans Reforged for an Existential War. The war stretched on, year after year, reshaping every corner of human civilization. In the decades after 2530, the Spartan program did not stand still. Old certainties fell away as new dangers closed in. Reports from the outer colonies described cities lost in a single night. Whole battalions vanished against the Covenant's machines and warriors. In these years, the Office of Naval Intelligence moved quickly and quietly, expanding the work begun with the original Spartan II candidates. The program's future was weighed against the survival of the species itself. Within the fortified corridors of Reach's castle base, the first signs of change appeared. Orders filtered down from high command. New candidates arrived, drawn from worlds scarred by invasion or erased from stellar charts. The training itself shifted. Where once the regimen focused on discipline and endurance, now instructors demanded adaptability, improvisation, and secrecy. Every day brought new drills, urban infiltration, silent movement, rapid extraction. The youngest Spartans learned to expect little rest and less certainty. Overhead, the hum of emptier armor tests became a constant, echoing through the halls and tunnels. Elsewhere, in places few would ever know, another path took shape. The world called Onyx lay hidden, its surface unremarkable, its purpose buried beneath layers of protocol and silence. There, the Spartan 3 initiative began. The briefings for this program were sparse and cold. Cost and risk outweighed tradition. The candidates were younger, their backgrounds marked by loss. Ceramic ossification replaced old surgical methods, delivered through injections that left bones unbreakable and bodies more easily repaired. The training was brutal and short. Survival was never guaranteed. From the beginning, the Spartan 3 project was meant to answer the impossible demands of the front lines, sending waves of silent operators against the Covenant's most fortified positions. The armor they wore reflected this philosophy. For the Spartan 2s, the MJO linear platform evolved into the Mark V. Its energy shields drew from captured Covenant technology, flickering to life in training bays and field exercises. The helmet's new visor glowed with quiet promise, housing advanced sensors, and for some, the voice of a smart AI. For the Spartan 2s, a different solution emerged. Semi-powered infiltration suits, SPI, wrapped each operator in plates of photoreactive material. The armor's surface shimmered and bent the light, allowing a Spartan 3 to vanish in the smoke and confusion of battle. Yet the SPI's protection was thin. It was designed for missions where discovery meant death, and where survival was measured in minutes, not years. As the new generations trained, the relationship between Spartans and command continued to shift. Some logs from the period describe friction. High-value assets received conflicting orders. Priorities changed without warning. In the shadows of Castle Base, a Spartan 2 recorded a private thought. The chain of command had grown distant, more interested in results than reasons. For the Spartan 2s, official briefings rarely mentioned names. Instead, companies were listed by letter and number, their fates sealed in operations that left few survivors. Specialized units like the headhunters trained in pairs, learning to move as one mind, ready to disappear or die far from any support. Across the fleet, whispers of the Spartan program spread among crews and officers. Some saw the arrival of a Spartan detachment as an omen, a promise that a world might yet be saved. Others wondered at the cost. The secrecy around the Spartan 3 initiative was nearly absolute. Outside of a few high-clearance circles, the details remained unspoken. Even the existence of Onyx as a training ground was little more than a rumor. The war's tempo never slowed. Spartans moved from world to world, boarding dropships in the dark, deploying without fanfare or recognition. In the field, their tactics changed with each new threat. On Sigma Octanus IV, Spartan 2s led assaults against entrenched Covenant forces, using prototype energy shields to press forward under plasma fire. The Mark V armor's systems allowed for seamless integration with battlefield sensors. For the first time, a smart AI, Cortana, joined a Spartan 2 in the field. Her presence added a new dimension to planning and execution. Communication became faster, targeting more precise. The Covenant's lines broke under coordinated attacks, their defenders unable to anticipate or withstand the sudden relentless pressure. On other fronts, Spartan 3 teams slipped past enemy patrols, their SPI armor blending with the heat and haze. The headhunters worked alone or in pairs, sabotaging reactors, eliminating targets, and vanishing before alarms could sound. Their missions rarely made it into official records. When they did, the language was spare: target neutralized, facility destroyed, no survivors. The cost was seldom listed. weapons and equipment evolved to keep pace with the enemy. Item descriptions from the period mention the SRS-99 AM sniper rifle, a weapon customized for Spartan hands. Its long frame and heavy recoil matched the enhanced strength of its operator, allowing for shots at distances that would have crippled a normal soldier. New variants of grenades, mines, and breaching charges appeared in supply drops, each designed for a specific task or threat. In the field, Spartans received resupply through rapid response pods, containers launched from orbit that delivered ammunition, medical kits, or replacement armor. The logistics behind these operations remained invisible to most, but to the Spartans, the arrival of a fresh magazine or a new battery could mean the difference between mission success and total loss. The presence of a Spartan on the battlefield carried weight. Marines and officers often spoke in hushed tones when a Spartan appeared among them. A single armored figure could rally a retreating line or hold a breach until reinforcements arrived. These moments were rarely recorded in reports, but the effect lingered in the memories of those who survived. Among the Covenant, the silhouette of a Spartan became a sign of resistance. Some accounts suggest moments of hesitation or panic among enemy ranks, though official records offer no confirmation. The legend grew on both sides, shaped by what was seen and what was imagined. Yet for every victory, there were losses that never made the headlines. The fate of many Spartan III companies remains unknown. ONI logs from these years are often incomplete, with casualty figures left blank or entire pages blacked out. Some operations ended with no survivors, their objectives marked as unknown or pending further investigation. Onyx, the hidden world that had shaped so many, is referenced in connection with a concealed Shield world entrance, but its final status is left unresolved in available briefings. Survivors from certain Spartan III groups were recovered in later years, but the details of their ordeal are left to implication and silence. Rumors of missing Spartans drifted through the ranks. In the quiet moments before a mission, some Marines would speak of operators who never returned, of call signs heard only once on the radio before fading into static. These stories grew over time, fed by gaps in official records and the natural hunger for heroes. Among the armories and workshops, prototypes for new armor modules and weapons appeared in technical documents, yet few ever saw service in the field. The reasons for their absence remain unspoken. Civilian understanding of the Spartan program was shaped by rumor, propaganda, and the persistent fog of war. Broadcasts replayed images of armored giants standing atop burning vehicles or leading evacuees through shattered streets. Fact and legend blended together. For many, the Spartans were more than soldiers. They became symbols of hope, sacrifice, and the possibility of victory against impossible odds. The true cost of their service, the lost names, the hidden graves, the unanswered questions, remained buried beneath layers of secrecy. As the war drew toward its most desperate days, the role of the Spartans stood clear. They had become both shield and spear, forged and reforged by the pressures of extinction. Their programs reflected the changing needs of humanity, the precision and endurance of the Spartan IIs, the expendable courage of the Spartan IIs, the relentless adaptation of technology and tactics. Yet for all that was written and recorded, much remains hidden. The silence around Onyx, the names erased from rosters, the missions listed only as numbers and dates. In the quiet between battles, within the walls of training facilities or the darkness of a drop pod descending toward fire, Spartans waited. They carried the weight of orders, the memory of lost worlds, and the uncertain hope that their actions might buy another day for those who remained. The war had changed them, as surely as it changed everything else. And in that transformation, they became something more than soldiers, something the records could not fully capture, and the world could not easily forget. Chapter 20. Discovery of Halo and the Return of an Ancient Threat. The year 2050-52 brought a sharp turn in the course of the Human Covenant War. With Reach in flames behind them, the crew of the UNSC Pillar of Autumn emerged from slip space into unknown territory. On the bridge, officers and enlisted alike stared in silence as the view screens filled with the image of an immense ring, impossibly wide, stretching across the void. The ship's sensors struggled to classify the structure. Readouts showed a surface lined with mountains, valleys, and wide blue lakes, all wrapped around a perfect artificial curve. No one on board had ever seen anything like it. Even the Covenant, whose ships appeared in pursuit only moments later, seemed startled by the sight. Their attack came fast, but their formation betrayed the same uncertainty that gripped the Autumn's crew. Captain Keyes did not hesitate. The ring's surface offered the only chance for survival. As Covenant plasma tore into the ship's hull, Keyes ordered the Pillar of Autumn onto a crash course. The order was sharp, but his voice carried an edge of awe. He called for ground teams to prepare for immediate deployment. Cryo-sleep pods hissed open. John 117, the ship's remaining Spartan, rose from cold stasis to the sharp alarms of battle. Marines rushed to their stations, gathering gear and weapons without knowing what kind of world awaited them below. Escape pods launched in waves. Through small windows, survivors glimpsed the ring's surface, lush forests, rolling plains, and sharp cliffs, all bound to the inside of a colossal wheel. Artificial gravity held steady, matching the conditions of any terrestrial planet. As the wreckage of the Pillar of Autumn burned its way toward the ground, the sense of wonder mixed with dread. The ring's scale defied understanding. Its surface was not merely land, but a carefully constructed ecosystem, wrapped around a hidden core. The first boots touched down near a wide valley, ringed by strange metal spires. Marines spread out, weapons ready, scanning for Covenant patrols. The ground beneath their feet felt real, but the sky above curved in a way no sky should. In the distance, they saw silver towers and bridges, their shapes too clean and regular to be natural. Some whispered that the ring was a weapon, or a place of worship for the Covenant. Others wondered who could have built such a thing, and why. Captain Keyes regrouped with scattered survivors, establishing a makeshift command post among the wreckage. His first orders focused on survival: secure supplies, locate survivors, and hold ground against Covenant advances. Reports from recon teams described enemy dropships landing nearby, their movements suggesting a race for control of the ring's key sites. The urgency was clear. Whoever controlled this place would hold an advantage, neither side fully understood. Within hours, both UNSC and Covenant forces were locked in firefights across the ring's surface. Each engagement revealed new details. The terrain shifted from grasslands to deep canyons, from dense forests to open beaches. In every environment, strange metal structures rose from the earth, their walls covered in glyphs and patterns no human could read. Some Marines reported seeing blue lights flicker along the walls, or doors that opened at a touch. The sense of being watched lingered in every shadow. The silent cartographer became a focal point. Set on a broad island ringed by white sand, the structure's name came from recovered data. Inside, its halls echoed with the sounds of battle. Covenant elites and grunts fought fiercely to secure the site, their movements guided by a purpose they refused to share. The cartographer itself was revealed as a kind of map room, its consoles displaying a shifting model of the ring. Through hard-won access, UNSC teams identified the location of a control room at the heart of the installation. The importance was immediate. If the cartographer could reveal the ring's secrets, the control room might grant command over its systems. Securing these sites came at a cost. Covenant forces were relentless. Their leaders pressed forward, driven by their own beliefs about the ring's significance. Some of their transmissions, intercepted by UNSC comms, spoke of a sacred relic and divine inheritance. To them, the ring was more than a weapon, it was a promise from gods they could not name. Yet their reverence did not slow their assault. Skirmishes grew fiercer as both sides converged on the control room, each hoping to seize whatever power the ring might contain. Inside the Forerunner structures, the air felt different. Surfaces gleamed with a cold light, and every corridor seemed to lead deeper into the unknown. Some doors required strange keys or codes, others opened in silence, revealing rooms lined with empty stasis pods or humming with unseen energy. The architecture was both beautiful and alien, its purpose never fully revealed. Marines spoke of warning glyphs etched into the walls, symbols that seemed to shift when viewed from the corner of the eye. Some rooms contained artifacts, small devices that pulsed with light when touched, their functions a mystery. As the UNSC advanced, they found evidence of containment areas, sealed for unknown reasons. Reports described heavy blast doors, reinforced beyond any clear need. In one such facility, teams broke through, expecting Covenant resistance. What they found instead was older and far more dangerous. The Flood, long dormant, burst from their cells in a wave of violence. The parasite overwhelmed Marines and Covenant alike. Firefights turned to chaos as infected bodies rose again, driven by a hunger that ignored pain or fear. Panic spread through the ranks. Radio transmissions filled with shouts and static, Marines calling for help, officers issuing orders to fall back or seal doors behind retreating squads. Covenant forces, too, were caught off guard. Their tactics, so precise in battle, faltered against the relentless advance of the Flood. Some attempted to burn the infected, others simply fled. The ring's corridors echoed with the sounds of running feet, weapons fire, and the inhuman cries of the newly possessed. In the midst of this crisis, dormant defense systems awoke. Automated turrets tracked movement, firing on anything not recognized by long-forgotten protocols. Some Marines described being guided by a floating construct, its eye glowing blue as it spoke in clipped formal tones. The construct, later known as Guilty Spark, offered assistance, but its motives remained unclear. It led John 117 and others deeper into the ring, toward the control room and the heart of the outbreak. Attempts to contain the Flood met with little success. Sealing doors and activating security systems brought only moments of respite. The parasite moved quickly, using vents and access shafts to bypass defenses. Official reports from the front lines grew grim. Command posts were lost. Squads fell silent. In the control room, consoles flickered with warnings in an unknown language. Every new discovery raised more questions than it answered. As the battle for Installation 04 raged, the true nature of the ring began to emerge. Data recovered from terminals and consoles hinted at a purpose beyond anything the UNSC had imagined. The Halo was a superweapon, designed not simply as a fortress or a sanctuary, but as a means to cleanse the galaxy of life. The Flood, once unleashed, represented a threat so dire that only total annihilation could contain it. Yet the details were incomplete. Protocols referenced in the data remained only partially translated. Some files were corrupted, others locked behind layers of security no one could break. References to other installations appeared in the ring's records. The language was vague, speaking of sibling rings and arrays. No coordinates were given, no clear instructions left behind. The existence of other halos was certain, but their locations and purposes remained out of reach. Guilty Spark, for all its knowledge, spoke in riddles. It guided with one hand and withheld with the other, its true intentions obscured by layers of protocol and secrecy. The flood's origin was no clearer. Reports from on high described the parasite only as an unknown vector. The first encounters gave no hint of where it had come from or how long it had been sealed away. Some logs speculated about ancient wars. Others simply recorded the facts: containment breached, infection spreading, all available forces in retreat. The sense of mystery deepened as the situation grew more desperate. Among the Forerunner constructs, ambiguity reigned. The functions of many devices and protocols were never fully explained. Some terminals referenced reclamation and activation, but what these terms meant was left unresolved. Item descriptions for recovered artifacts suggested abilities far beyond current understanding, yet these objects vanished in the chaos, their fate unknown. After the ring's destruction, official reports grew sparse. The control room's last moments were not recorded. The silent cartographer's final status was left out of dispatches. In the aftermath, only fragments remained. The story of Halo's discovery is one of awe, confusion, and terror. For the crew of the Pillar of Autumn, the ring offered a fleeting hope of escape and a new battlefield, unlike any before. For the Covenant, it was a sacred promise and a site of bitter loss. For all who set foot upon its surface, the ring revealed the limits of their knowledge and the dangers that come with awakening what should remain sealed. In the quiet that follows, many questions linger. The true intentions of the Forerunners, the full scope of the Halo array, and the final fate of the ancient threat remain shrouded in uncertainty. Only the echoes of battle and the silence of the ring endure. Chapter 21: The Collapse of Covenant, Certainty, and the Great Schism. Within the vast halls of High Charity, the Covenant's city and seat of power, tension moved like a silent current. The year was 250-52, and the alliance that had endured for ages now stood on the verge of collapse. The prophets, once regarded as the unwavering voice of the gods, grew secretive and distant. Their decisions, once accepted without question, began to stir unrest. The destruction of the unyielding Hierophant and Truth's mighty fleet had left the Covenant's military strength wounded. Yet it was not this loss alone that threatened the alliance. It was the shadow of betrayal that crept through council chambers and echoed in hurried whispers among the ranks. In the aftermath of the Prophet of Regret's assassination at Installation 05, a new decree swept through High Charity. The Sangheli, who had long served as the Covenant's honor guard, found themselves suddenly cast aside. The Prophet of Truth, standing beneath the golden light of the council chamber, announced the replacement of the Sangheli with the Jiralhane. As the words settled over the assembly, Sangheli councillors exchanged looks of disbelief and anger. Their armor, once a symbol of pride and tradition, felt heavy with the weight of humiliation. The Jiralhane, broad and silent, took their new posts with a sense of anticipation, their presence filling the chamber with unspoken threat. The councillors' response was swift and sharp. Threats of resignation rippled through the ranks of the Sangheli leadership. In private, some spoke of the prophet's growing distrust, of secrets kept behind closed doors and orders issued without consultation. Others questioned the very foundation of the alliance, wondering if the God's will truly guided the prophets, or if something else now steered their hand. The High Council, once a place of unity, became a field of suspicion. Old alliances faltered as Sangheli and Jiralhane eyed each other across the marble floors. Beyond the council chamber, unrest spread among the Covenant's ranks. In the shadowed corridors and sanctuaries of high charity, murmurs of dissent grew. The replacement of the honor guard was not the only wound. News traveled quickly of Caesar Refumé and his artifact retrieval team, who had gone into open rebellion after encountering the strange construct known as 343 Guilty Spark. Their claims, whispered among the Sangheili, spoke of a truth hidden for generations. The arbiter, Velvadami, was sent to silence this rebellion. Yet in the gas mines of Threshold, he listened to the words of Refumé and the revelations of the ancient monitor. Doubt took root. The arbiter's journey revealed more than the prophets intended. He saw the cracks in covenant dogma, the possibility that the great journey itself was a lie. With each new revelation, the certainty that had bound the alliance began to unravel. The Sangheili, once the prophets' staunchest enforcers, now faced the reality that their faith had been manipulated for purposes unknown. The prophets' religious rhetoric, once a source of unity, now felt hollow to many who heard it. The seeds of the schism were sown, and the first fractures in covenant leadership appeared. As November drew near, the tension that had simmered for weeks finally erupted. On November 3rd, the Great Schism began. The covenant, once a single, unified force, split along lines of loyalty and belief. The Sangheili, joined by those who still trusted their leadership, turned against the prophets and the Jiralhane. The prophets, for their part, placed their faith in the brutes, elevating them to positions of command and turning them against their former allies. The corridors of high charity, once filled with the orderly march of unified troops, became battlegrounds. The sound of energy swords and spiker fire echoed through the sanctuaries as Sangheili and Jiralhane clashed. Within the fleet of righteous vigilance, betrayal struck with deadly force. The prophet of conviction, a figure of authority, fell to one of his own shipmasters after it was revealed that he had ordered the killings of Sangheili counselors. Trust, already fragile, shattered completely. Across ships and outposts, orders were questioned, and loyalties divided. The command structure that had held the covenant together now lay in ruins, replaced by chaos and fear. At Delta Halo, the arbiter's fate hung in the balance. Sent to retrieve the installation's index, he succeeded in his mission, only to be betrayed by Tartarus, the Jiralhane chieftain. With a sudden, brutal act, Tartarus cast the arbiter into the depths of the ring world. There, in darkness, the arbiter was captured by the Gravemind, the voice of the flood. In a strange alliance, the Gravemind brought together the arbiter and the Master Chief. Both now saw the prophet's plan for what it was, and both understood that the future of the galaxy depended on stopping the activation of Installation 05. While divided Covenant forces fought among themselves, a new threat emerged. The Flood, using the captured human ship in amber-clad, breached High Charity's defenses. Infection spread rapidly, turning the heart of the Covenant into a nightmare of panic and violence. The Prophet of Mercy fell to the Flood, his final moments marked by terror and regret. The city's inhabitants, caught between civil war and infection, scattered. Corridors once filled with ritual and ceremony became hunting grounds for the Flood. The chaos of the schism touched every member species. The Ungoi, long pressed into service by their superiors, faced impossible choices. Some fought alongside the Sangheili, others remained loyal to the prophets, and many simply tried to survive. The Kigyar, ever pragmatic, weighed their options carefully, shifting allegiances as the tides of battle changed. For many, confusion reigned. Orders conflicted, leaders vanished, and the familiar structure of Covenant life dissolved into disorder. Reports from the front lines described desperate actions. Terminals and logs captured the voices of Sangheili commanders, urging their troops to hold the line, even as the enemy wore familiar colors. In the sanctuaries of high charity, firefights raged between former allies. The schism's violence spread outward, touching the outer colonies and distant fleets. Skirmishes erupted in places far from the eyes of the prophets. Some of these battles were never formally recorded, their outcomes left to rumor and memory. The flood's incursion into high charity added another layer of uncertainty. Former enemies, facing extinction, sometimes found themselves fighting side by side. These alliances rarely lasted. The threat of infection left trust in short supply. Survivors moved in small groups, avoiding both the flood and the enemy they once called brother. The city's great spires, symbols of power and unity, fell silent as the infection spread. As the civil war burned through the covenant, the prophets clung to their authority. Their words, broadcast across what remained of the covenant's networks, called for faith and obedience. Yet with each passing day, fewer listened. The Sangheli, now convinced that the prophets had deceived them, gathered their followers and prepared for a new future. The Jiralhane, emboldened by their sudden rise, pressed their advantage with brutal force. The old order was gone. In the aftermath of the Great Schism, much remained unclear. The covenant, as it had existed, was finished. Its member species scattered, some forging new paths, others disappearing into the shadows. The Sangheli emerged as victors in the civil war, but their victory came at a cost. High charity, once the pride of the covenant, lay in ruins. The full extent of civilian casualties and displacement was never recorded. For many, the only certainty was loss. The fate of the Ungoi, Kigyar, and other lesser species remains uncertain. Campaign records offer little about their ultimate destiny. Some may have found refuge with the Sangheli, others may have sought new masters, and many simply vanished from the chronicles of war. The prophets' final plans, too, remain shrouded in ambiguity. Hints within codex entries and terminals suggest secret meetings and hidden agendas, but the truth of these rumors is never fully revealed. Among the ruins, the legacy of the Great Schism endures. The Sangheli, once enforcers of the prophet's will, now chart their own course. The Jiralhane, ascendant for a brief moment, must reckon with the consequences of their actions. High charity stands empty, its grand architecture haunted by memories of what was lost. The schism's true scope, marked by unrecorded battles and unspoken pacts, may never be fully known. In the quiet that follows, uncertainty lingers. The prophet's knowledge of the forerunners, a mystery that began this cascade of events, remains unresolved. Some records suggest they held secrets never shared with the wider covenant. Others imply that even they were blind to the full truth. The future of the Sangheli and Jiralhane, the fate of High Charity's scattered survivors, and the final meaning of the schism are questions left for another day. For now, only the echoes of conflict remain. The covenant's certainty has collapsed, replaced by a world where old truths have turned to dust and new possibilities wait in the shadows. The story of the Great Schism ends not with answers, but with silence and the memory of what was lost. Chapter 22: The Ark and the Last Activation of a Halo Ring. In late 2050-52, the world changed beneath a sky split by fire and ancient machinery. The land near Mombasa, Kenya, once scarred by invasion, became the stage for a new kind of discovery. There, embedded in the earth, lay a forerunner structure that had waited in silence for millennia. The covenant called it the portal, a gateway to something beyond human understanding. As the prophet of truth set his plans in motion, the air shimmered with energy. The forerunner dreadnought, immense and silent, hovered over the portal's heart. When truth activated the structure, the world seemed to bend, and a passage opened far beyond the stars. Through this newly awakened gateway, fleets moved with purpose and dread. Human ships, battered and scarred by years of war, followed the Sangheli vessels, once enemies, now bound by necessity. The view beyond the portal was not of any known system. Instead, ships emerged above a construct, vast enough to dwarf planets, a world forge, unknown to any who had come before. This was Installation 00, called by some the Ark. Its surface stretched in sweeping plains and geometric canyons, punctuated by impossible towers and luminous bridges. Across the horizon, the shape of an unfinished halo ring cast a thin shadow, its form incomplete but unmistakable. The Ark's scale defied easy measure. Dropships passed over chasms that seemed bottomless, their sides lined with strange metallic growths. Massive foundries glowed in the distance, their machinery silent but waiting. In the center of this machine world rose the cartographer, a tower of light and data. Its walls shimmered with glyphs, offering hints of the Ark's true function. Those who entered found themselves surrounded by holographic maps, projections of the halo array stretching across the galaxy. Every ring, every connection, was charted here. The Ark did not merely monitor the rings. It could create them, rebuilding what had been lost, controlling what must not be unleashed. The first steps on the Ark's surface brought conflict. Covenant loyalists, those who still served the prophets, held key positions. Their patrols moved with discipline, securing the high ground and ancient walkways. The Sangheli and human forces landed in scattered waves, forced to fight for every inch. The ground here was alien and unyielding. Even the air felt different, tinged with the scent of ozone and dust. Through the shattered halls and open plazas, the sounds of battle echoed, plasma fire, shouts, and the distant roar of engines. Yet, as the fighting intensified, another threat revealed itself. The flood had arrived, their presence unmistakable. Blackened growth spread along the Ark's corridors. Pods burst open, releasing infection forms that moved with mindless hunger. Some said the flood had come through the portal, following the ships in the chaos. Others believed the parasite had always found a way, adapting, surviving, and waiting for any chance to spread. On the Ark, the flood found new ground to corrupt, and their advance was relentless. Within this turmoil, the prophet of truth pressed his advantage. He claimed a stronghold at the heart of the Ark, locking down control rooms and surrounding himself with loyal guards. His vision was clear and absolute, to fire the halo rings and complete the great journey. Human and Sangheli leaders recognized the stakes. The Ark was not simply a place of exile or research. It was the control point for the entire halo array. If truth succeeded, every ring would ignite, and every living thing within their reach would be lost. The push toward truth's fortress demanded sacrifice. Human marines and Sangheli warriors moved together, their ranks thinned by constant ambushes. The landscape shifted from open fields to narrow walkways suspended above glowing depths. Debris from past battles littered the ground. The unfinished halo ring loomed overhead, its framework a reminder of the Ark's terrible potential. As the Allied forces advanced, they encountered defenses both technological and organic. Turrets emerged from the ground, firing arcs of energy. Flood forms crawled from vents and fissures, attacking without fear. In the final approach, the prophet's stronghold became a battleground. The walls shook from explosions. Shadows flickered as the flood pressed in from every side, their numbers swelling with each fallen soldier. Through smoke and confusion, the voices of leaders cut through the chaos. Orders issued over comms carried urgency and hope. Sangheli commanders rallied their warriors, while human officers coordinated fire teams. The alliance, fragile but determined, held together under fire. The unfinished halo ring itself became the final stage. Its surface was raw and untested, a skeleton of what it might become. Yet it housed the control room, the only place where the new ring could be activated or destroyed. John 1:17, known to many as the Master Chief, moved with purpose alongside the Arbiter and Sergeant Major Avery Johnson. Each step toward the control chamber was contested. The Flood, sensing the threat to their existence, surged in waves. Their forms twisted and multiplied, blocking every corridor, filling every chamber with the stench of decay. Inside the control room, the situation reached its breaking point. The walls pulsed with Forerunner light, and the machinery responded to ancient codes. The activation index, recovered from a fallen ring, was the key to the sequence. Sergeant Major Johnson, battered but resolute, prepared to activate the system. At that moment, 343 guilty Spark intervened. The Monitor, once a guide and now a guardian of the Ark, refused to allow the ring's destruction. In his determination to protect Forerunner design, he turned against the intruders. Johnson fell to Spark's weapon, his sacrifice marking the cost of defiance. The final struggle was swift and violent. The Arbiter and John 117 fought their way to the controls. The sequence began, and the ring's systems shuddered to life. Energy arced through the unfinished structure. The ring, never meant to fire in its incomplete state, tore itself apart. Fragments spun off into the void. The shockwave ripped through the control room, and the Ark itself suffered catastrophic damage. Metal groaned, towers collapsed, and the ground split open. Those who survived escaped through collapsing corridors, the world behind them falling into ruin. In the aftermath, silence settled over the remains of the Ark. The survivors, few and scattered, found themselves adrift in uncertainty. The fate of Installation Dibolo could not be seen from the shattered walkways or the battered hulls of fleeing ships. Some codex entries, recovered in the confusion, spoke of sealed chambers deep within the Ark, rooms that no human or Sangheli had ever entered. Their contents, whatever secrets or dangers they might hold, remained untouched. The unfinished halo ring, once a symbol of threat and possibility, vanished into ambiguity. Campaign records offered no clear answer. Whether fragments of the ring drifted in orbit, or whether they were lost to the Ark's collapse, was left unresolved. The Flood, too, left traces behind. Though their main force was broken in the final battle, signs of the parasite's persistence lingered in the shadows. Some believed the Flood would always find a way to endure, slipping into cracks and waiting for another chance. Terminals scattered across the Ark hinted at Forerunner technology that defied understanding. Devices hummed with power. Doors remained sealed, their glyphs unreadable. The purpose of some machines was never explained. In the quiet that followed the conflict, these mysteries remained, untouched and unsolved. As the last escape ships vanished into the stars, the Ark faded from view. For those who had walked its halls, the experience left scars and questions. The alliance between human and Sangheli forces had survived the worst, but at great cost. The destruction of the ring had averted disaster, but the damage done to the Ark could not be undone. The fate of those left behind, the future of the Flood, and the full reach of Forerunner technology remained uncertain. In the quiet that followed, the Ark stood as a monument to conflict and survival. Its towers, broken but proud, caught the last light of distant suns. Somewhere in its depths, machines waited in silence, their purpose known only to those who built them. The war had ended, but the mysteries of the Ark endured, their answers lost among the ruins and the stars beyond. Chapter 23: The End of the Human Covenant War. In the final months of the Human Covenant War, the galaxy became a place of shifting loyalties and desperate alliances. By late 250-52, the Covenant had fractured under the strain of civil war. The Sangheili, once the Covenant's honored warriors, now found themselves locked in open conflict with the Jiralhane, or brutes, who had risen quickly as the new enforcers of the Prophet's will. Across ruined worlds and shattered fleets, rumors spread of Sangheili ships breaking away from the Covenant armada. Human intelligence, battered but persistent, recorded strange encounters. Sangheili vessels no longer fired upon retreating UNSC ships, and in some sectors, brute-led patrols seemed to hunt their former allies with a new ferocity. The old Covenant order, built over centuries, had begun to collapse. This collapse reached its breaking point, far from any known star. The Ark, a structure of impossible scale, hung beyond the edge of the Milky Way. Its surface stretched under an alien sky, dotted with the scars of battle. Here, the final act of the war would play out. A joint fleet, hastily assembled from battered UNSC warships and Sangheili cruisers, arrived at the Ark's coordinates. The alliance had formed out of necessity, not trust. Orders were exchanged in clipped transmissions, and the tension between human and Sangheili crews never fully faded. Yet as the fleet emerged from slipspace, there was no time to dwell on old grievances. Above the Ark, the last loyalist Covenant fleet waited, commanded by the Prophet of Truth and his Jiralhane generals. The first shots came quickly. In the silence of space, energy beams and missiles danced between ships. UNC frigates moved alongside Sangheili assault carriers, their targets clear, the Covenant warships that still answered to truth. On the ground, dropships screamed through the Ark's thin atmosphere, carrying Marines and Sangheili warriors alike. The surface of the Ark became a patchwork of fire and movement, ruined forerunner structures, twisted metal, and the bodies of the fallen. For the first time, human and Sangheili soldiers fought side by side, exchanging brief words over comms and covering one another as they advanced. The air crackled with tension and the echo of gunfire. The Prophet of Truth had retreated to the citadel, deep within the Ark. From there, he intended to activate the Halo Array, a weapon that could end all sentient life in the galaxy. His Jiralhane guards formed a last line of defense, fanatical to the end. The assault on the citadel was relentless. Human tanks rolled over broken ground, Sangheili phantoms strafed Covenant positions, and squads pressed forward under fire. The battle's outcome was never certain. Every corridor and bridge became a place of desperate struggle, the fate of billions hanging in the balance. In the chaos, the old Covenant hierarchy crumbled. Brute units, once united by loyalty to the Prophets, began to falter as Sangheili detachments cut through their lines. Some brutes fought to the last, while others retreated or turned on their own. The chain of command was lost. Among the ruins, Marines encountered Covenant troops who surrendered or fled, their faith broken. The collapse was visible in every shattered command post and every abandoned weapon. High Charity, the Covenant's holy city, drifted in ruin above the Ark. Its remains served as a grim reminder of what had been lost. Debris from the city fell across the Ark's plains, and scattered terminal logs spoke of panic, confusion, and the end of belief. The final confrontation came within the citadel itself. The prophet of truth, now the last of his kind, fell to the combined assault of human and Sangheli forces. The war's architect was gone, and with his death, the last hope for Covenant victory vanished. The battle on the Ark, fought on December 11th, 2052, marked the end of the human Covenant war. The Covenant, once unified and unstoppable, was gone. After the guns fell silent, the survivors faced a changed world. The war's end did not bring immediate peace. Wounded soldiers were evacuated from the Ark, their ships limping back through slip space. The joint fleets dispersed, each side wary of the other's intentions. On Sanghelios, the Sangheli homeworld, Fel Vadam returned as a hero. His leadership had helped shatter the Covenant and forge the alliance with humanity. In the wake of victory, the swords of Sanghelios emerged as the new voice of his people. Yet even as the Livadam's ships gathered above his world, rumors spread of unrest among the Sangheli and of splintered brute warbands on distant worlds. For humanity, the cost of survival was plain to see. Earth's surface bore the scars of orbital bombardment. Entire cities remained in ruin, and the remains of old defenses rusted in the rain. The UNSC, though battered, moved quickly to mark the war's end. On March 3, 2053, a monument rose in the Kenyan savannah near Mount Kilimanjaro. Survivors gathered under a pale sky. Lord Hood, now the voice of the UNSC, presided over the ceremony. The Lavadam stood beside him, an honored guest. The two leaders spoke little, but their presence together signaled a new era. The Treaty of 2052, signed between humanity and the swords of Sanghelios, formalized a fragile peace. The ceremony was somber. Names of the dead were read aloud, each one a story cut short by war. Around the monument, soldiers and civilians alike stood in silence. The air carried a sense of both relief and uncertainty. The war was over, but the future remained unclear. As the crowd dispersed, the wounds of the past lingered. The Stor Vadam's presence on Earth was unprecedented, a sign that old enemies could become allies. Yet for many, trust would not come easily. Some questions had no answers. The fate of John 1:17, the Master Chief, was left unresolved. His last known act had been to ensure the destruction of the Ark's installation, preventing the activation of the Halo array. Afterward, his ship, the Forward Unto Dawn, vanished into slip space, its final coordinates unknown. Cortana, his companion, remained with him. No record confirmed their survival or their deaths. Among the survivors, stories circulated of the chief's sacrifice, but none could say for certain what had become of him. The flood, the ancient parasite that had haunted both sides of the war, also faded from view. Terminal logs recovered from the Ark suggested containment, but no one could be sure. Some areas showed signs of cleansing fire. Others remained sealed, their silence raising new fears. The Ark itself, once the stage for the final battle, was left in ruins. Per the terms of the new treaty, neither humanity nor the swords of Sanghelios would return to the remains of Installation 04. The long-term consequences of the Ark's destruction were not discussed. The galaxy moved on, but the scars of the Ark remained. In the days that followed, fleets regrouped and wounded soldiers returned home. Some ships never came back. Codex entries noted missing crews, lost in the confusion of retreat. Among the Sangheli, new conflicts began to simmer. The old Covenant order was gone, but its remnants still held power on distant worlds. For both sides, peace was fragile. The joint victory at the Ark had brought an end to open war, but it could not erase decades of hatred and loss. Yet even in the uncertainty, there were signs of hope. The monument in Kenya stood as a promise. Human and Sangheli leaders spoke of rebuilding and of a future without war. The March 3rd ceremony, though somber, marked the start of something new. Survivors exchanged words with former enemies. The Lamvadam's return to Sanghelios was greeted with both celebration and caution, his people divided between those who welcomed the new alliance and those who clung to old traditions. On Earth, reconstruction began. The remains of orbital defenses were cleared, and new settlements rose from the ashes. Some mysteries persisted. The true fate of the Master Chief remained one of the great unanswered questions. No campaign epilogue offered a final word. The possibility of other Forerunner installations lingered in the background, but no records confirmed their existence or activity. The eradication of the flood was left ambiguous, a shadow that refused to fade. Among the survivors, stories of missing comrades and unresolved battles became part of the new era's lore. As the months passed, the galaxy settled into an uneasy peace. New conflicts among Covenant remnants began to flare after March 2050, but the era of total war had ended. The closing scenes of the campaign, both in dialogue and in silence, carried a sense of loss and hope. The war had redrawn the map of the stars, forging unlikely friendships and leaving old wounds open. In the quiet after the storm, the survivors looked to the future, carrying with them the memory of what had been lost and the fragile promise of what might still be found. Chapter 24: A Galaxy Marked by Ancient Decisions. The last echoes of battle have faded. In the quiet that follows, the galaxy feels larger and stranger than before. The familiar roar of Covenant fleets is gone. The once mighty empire has collapsed, leaving its former subjects scattered, uncertain, and free in ways they have never known. On Sanghelios, the Sangheli gather beneath their own banners. The swords of Sanghelios rise from the ashes, their leaders determined to shape a future that is no longer bound by the dogma of the prophets. The old Covenant's strict order has vanished. Now rival keeps and isolated enclaves mark the landscape, each one charting a different path. Some Sangheli look inward, rebuilding ancient traditions. Others turn their gaze outward, wary of the threats that may follow in the wake of war. The end of fighting does not bring instant peace. Instead, it reveals the true scale of what was lost and what remains unfinished. In February of 2055, the unified Earth government and the Swords of Sanghelios sign a formal treaty. It is the first real hope for stability in a generation. On March 3rd, both sides gather to mark the official end of hostilities. The ceremony is subdued, shaped by exhaustion and the knowledge that old wounds do not heal in a day. The Covenant, as it was known, has ceased to exist. Its former species, no longer united by faith or fear, drift into rivalries, piracy, and uncertain alliances. The Sangheli are not alone in their search for identity. The Ungoi and Kigyar scatter to distant homes. Some become mercenaries. Others cling to fragments of the old order, uncertain how to begin again. On Earth, the signs of war linger. Cities wear their scars openly. Rubble lines the edges of new construction. Human settlements push outward, reclaiming ground once lost to glassing. In some places, the air still carries the faint smell of burnt stone and ozone. Yet there is movement, a sense that life is returning. Children play in parks built atop old craters. Engineers and laborers work side by side, raising walls and planting gardens. The first year without the covenant brings a fragile peace. For many, it is the first time in memory that the sky does not hold the threat of invasion. Former covenant strongholds stand abandoned. In the shadow of ruined temples and silent hangars, local populations sift through the remains. Some structures are left to crumble. Others are rebuilt, repurposed as shelters or storage. The architecture is strange, a reminder of a time when the galaxy was ruled by fear and ritual. Mission reports speak of scavengers and scholars alike, searching for lost technology or simply sheltering from the elements. Covenant weapons and vehicles, once symbols of power, now gather dust in makeshift depots. In the markets of Sanghelios and the outer colonies, rumors swirl about who controls which caches and what secrets might remain hidden. For those with the means and the will, the scramble for technology begins almost at once. Human and Sangheli teams race to secure what they can. Some seek to study, others to profit. Fragments of plasma rifles and pieces of energy shields are traded in quiet corners. The words of traders and soldiers carry a note of caution. Covenant devices are powerful, but few fully understand their workings. Stories spread of accidents, of weapons that misfire, or artifacts that simply refuse to function. The Banished, a new and brutal force led by Atriox, are quick to seize what they can. In May of 2053, a raid on Kostroda leaves Onai with news of Atriox's growing influence and his capture of Covenant assets. The smaller species, once foot soldiers and servants, find themselves adrift. Campaign records mention Ungoy enclaves struggling for independence. Kigyar ships slip into piracy, preying on unguarded convoys. Few have the strength to stand alone. Most try to adapt, seeking new patrons or carving out small territories where they can. Their fates are uncertain, shaped by old rivalries and the sudden absence of authority. Among the ruins, the atmosphere is tense, but not without hope. The air crackles with opportunity, but also with the threat of new conflicts waiting to ignite. Amid this shifting balance, ancient decisions cast long shadows. The Forerunners, gone for millennia, still shape the present with relics and mysteries that refuse to fade. The Treaty of 2052, signed in the aftermath of the war, establishes a wide exclusion zone around the remains of Installation 04. Neither humanity nor the Sangheli are permitted to return. The site is silent, sealed by mutual agreement, and watched from afar. Yet the galaxy is far from empty. Across dozens of worlds, Forerunner installations lie dormant or half awake. Terminal logs from post-war expeditions tell of cautious teams exploring the ruins of the Ark. Some structures hum with faint energy. Others stand dark and unyielding, their secrets locked away. Codex entries describe sites under close observation. Researchers, both human and Sangheli, set up camps at the edges of these ancient places. They catalogue what they find, aware that every discovery brings both promise and peril. Environmental details in newly accessible zones reveal scattered artifacts. Fragments of unknown metals, cryptic glyphs and machines that defy explanation dot the landscape. Some are recovered and sent to distant laboratories. Others are left untouched, surrounded by warning markers and the quiet fear of what might happen if they are disturbed. Competition for Forerunner technology grows intense. Mission briefings warn of the dangers posed by unstable relics. The Damascus Ordnance Commission, formed by ONI in May of 2053, begins the work of regulating MJO-L near Gen 2 variants. These new armors, built on recovered technology, offer an edge but also raise questions about dependence and control. In distant systems, hidden installations are hinted at in item logs. The possibility of untouched sites draws explorers and opportunists alike. Each new find could tip the balance of power or unleash dangers no one fully understands. Within Shield World 006, a population of Huragok is discovered. These silent engineers move through the ruins, tending to machines older than memory. Human survivors establish communications with Onai ships nearby, sharing what they learn. The presence of the Huragok raises both hope and uncertainty. Their knowledge is vast, but their motives remain difficult to read. In the same year, Blue Team captures the Forerunner Ancilla, known as Intrepid Eye. The event is noted in official records, a reminder that the line between artifact and intelligence is often blurred. The Sangheili view these relics with a mix of reverence and caution. Once they worshipped the Forerunners as gods. Now, stripped of that faith, some approach the artifacts as puzzles to be solved. Others fear the consequences of meddling too deeply. NPC dialogue and campaign logs reveal debates among Sangheili leaders. Some argue for restraint, warning that the past is best left undisturbed. Others push for study and adaptation, convinced that survival depends on mastering the old technologies. Among humans, the mood is restless. Codex entries speak of excitement and anxiety. The ruins promise advancement, but also risk. Some see a chance to leap forward, to reclaim a place among the stars. Others worry about the dangers that come with tampering in matters not fully understood. The legacy of the Forerunners is not only a matter of science, but also of memory and fear. The machines and mysteries they left behind shape every decision, every hope for the future. Yet peace is fragile. Beneath the surface, old tensions simmer. Campaign epilogues hint at uneasy truces. The treaty between humanity and the Sangheili is a ceasefire, not a friendship. Both sides remember betrayal and loss. Rumors spread of on-eye operations near the Installation 04 exclusion zone. Some whisper that the treaty is already fraying. In July of 2053, Lord Hood arrives at Sanghelios to meet Thelvadam. The proposal of a joint human Sangheili task force is a gesture toward cooperation, but also a sign that trust remains thin. The fate of the flood lingers as a silent question. Codex entries and environmental clues leave the matter unresolved. The immediate threat appears contained. Yet no one can say with certainty that it is gone. In the ruins, strange markings and sealed doors suggest that the Forerunners' intentions were never fully understood. Some believe the ancient builders left warnings. Others see only puzzles, waiting for the right key. The closing moments of the war are marked by motifs of mistrust and hope. Official records and campaign material capture the tension in every conversation. Some characters look to the future, dreaming of alliances and shared purpose. Others hold back, wary of old wounds reopening. The consequences of ancient decisions remain present in every choice. The galaxy is shaped not only by what has been built, but also by what has been left behind. In these days, the sense of waiting is everywhere. The air is thick with stories, some true, some half-remembered. No one knows what shape the future will take. What is clear, as the dust settles, is that the galaxy has been marked by the choices of those who came before. The survivors walk forward, carrying both the burdens and the hopes of ages past. The way ahead is uncertain, but the echoes of ancient decisions linger in every step,